Okay, my friends, exciting day. They have rewritten the fossil history of life on land. Let's look into this. This changes everything in the fossil history. Okay, my good friends, once again, shocker du jour. They just announced today that there's been a new discovery of some fossil that upends all of what we had considered to be life on Earth, the beginning of life on Earth. Now, this was a paper Yale put out about the Ediacara, which was slimy sea creatures. They lived in a warm, slimy planetary petri dish, but it was worldwide, and there was 3 layers. And this is called the Ediacara, and they preserved exceptional preservation right here. Exceptional preservation. So, Nero, be quiet. Okay, sorry about that. My dog Nero, he doesn't like squirrels, and they seem to be coming around today. So anyway, he may be barking here and there. Don't worry about it. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about rewriting the story of life on land. Let's see if we can do that. And we're going to be talking about the Ediacara organisms. Well, actually, we're going to be talking about mud fossils, because in 2015 I wrote this paper about mud fossils are exact copies of original creatures, and they are separated on a fascia. And it was called fascia-facilitated fossilization. Fascia-facilitated fossilization. The coating of everything, every organ, even bones. That's fascia around that bone. It's their membranes, basically. And they protected and preserved. They allowed things to come in and go back out, but it was a barrier surrounding all of the organs. Well, everything, basically everything has fascia around it. It's it for everything. It protects and separates tissues, as it does well during your lifetime, and it does it when you're buried too, because when it was wet and mud, and the red beds were the key. Those are the things, it really felt like it was still in its flesh. Let's talk about those sedimentation layers, because that's what Yale's paper here is all about. Exceptional preservation, soft-bodied creatures. And it goes on, it's a quite detailed paper, and it's just wrong, but it's there's a lot of it. And I'll show you where they found this. Remember his name, Ediacara. All that means is a place in Australia. And what does it refer to? Well, let's see. It refers to a certain type of sedimentation. Okay, I asked about the 3 layers, the red bed, the gray clay, and the black cap. Was it found where Ediacara was? And they said yes, particularly in this area. Red beds consist of red sandstone, which also mud, basically is red mud. Clay layer above the red beds are typically green or gray clay, which is the gray clay, which I'm going to show you all this stuff. I have it here. I live in this particular area. And then the black cap, the uppermost layers, frequently comprise black shales or cap carbonates. There's the 3 layers: red bed, clay, black cap. Is commonly observed in Ediacara fossil sites. Well, let me show you my fossil sites where it is observed extremely well. Okay, so we know that the Triassic era is 3 layers, and I live right there, right in that spot in the central Connecticut. Very, very well studied. Red bed, gray clay, black cap. Where it's a black is exposed. That means the Triassic layer is right on the surface. These 3 layers, the red bed, the gray clay, and the black cap. And that's exactly the same layer they found in Australia, where they said these are Ediacara, perfectly preserved because of these exact conditions, which I agree, mine are perfectly preserved. But these are bones. That's a bone. That is not a slimy creature, and that's what Yale is saying, and all the rest of them, because they can't deal with the fact that there was creatures here long ago. And when I show you what I found in this triple layer here, it's going to knock you out. Okay, I asked my good friend Chat, is central Connecticut in an exposed Triassic rock area? Yes, Central Connecticut is indeed part of an area with exposed Triassic rocks, specifically within what's known as the Hartford Basin, a major geological feature in southern New England. It is the most well-studied Triassic rock area, I believe, in the world. Overview: Central Connecticut and Triassic rock. Geological setting: Central Connecticut lies in the Hartford Rift Basin, which formed during the breakup and all that nonsense they're talking about. Late Triassic era, 200 to 230 million years ago. I'm not believing any of that stuff. But the basin, yes. And that's what created these excellent preservation, was because it was basically boiled in a bucket. And they ended up separating on the fascia plains. That's a lung. And it's flat because it was in the Great Flood. It boiled out of the creature's body, and the creature died like this, intact. And I know that because that's where the heart was. Right there. That was where the heart sat, underneath the guy's body, and he died with his heart like there. It was going to thump, and it stopped. And then he just dissolved, except for where the fascia was. My paper, Fascia Facilitated Fossilization, describes the process very well. I drilled deep into here and got blood out of there and had it DNA tested. This is human. This is human mitochondrial DNA, modern Homo sapien. I have the reports, and I've had them for 10 years. So this is the Triassic era, the 3 layers. Now let me show you what I found inside those 3 layers. Now, virtually everything I found is flat on the backside, laying on the red bed, flat. All right, either they came off the top of the red bed or they were in the red bed. It doesn't matter. They turned flat, and the bodies were still completely composed together. This is another lung. That's a lung, and it's DNA tested. This wasn't DNA tested, and this was CAT scanned. I had 7 CAT scans, 3 DNA tests. This and 2 that were giants. This is what blew them off. It made them crazy. This is flat because this was also a lung, and that's the pleura of the lung, that stuff. And this is actually the alveoli. And when you look at a microscope, you can see the little tiny alveoli. This is from a giant's hair follicle. This is a human footprint in the middle of the Triassic era layers. This is the red bed, and then there was a layer of gray on top, and it got pushed down with a human footprint through the red bed and molded flawlessly. I have it. I'm going to show it to you in great detail. And this is the black cap that was on top. All 3 layers were together when I found it. And they just separated right off like this. Amazing, the area I'm in. And this is a human, well, I don't know if it's human, but it's a gigantic hair follicle. Here it is right there. There's the erector pili muscle. There's the hair shaft. There's the sebaceous gland. There's the root ball. And there's the hair papillae, the red and blue blood vessels at the bottom. This is 2 inches wide. So the stuff I had was giants, and I had it DNA tested. Some of it was CAT scanned, some of the smaller stuff. And it needs to be re-examined now because they're starting to come to the realization this is not silly, this is real. And to dismiss it for this many years is kind of tragic. Okay, my friends, so what did I find in my Triassic area? Well, I found a bunch of stuff exposed right at the top of the surface. I didn't have to hardly dig at all for these things. So when I found them, they were not accepted, so I went ahead and had DNA tests on 3. I extracted from inside, this is one of them, and that's a lung, and I drill inside. I don't swab it from the surface, obviously. And it's flat as a pancake because this was the Great Flood, and that's what caused these 3 layers, and they were all wet at the same time, and I can validate my statements. Now, these are the 3 samples. I'm going to show you. I just showed you the lung, and these are very, very serious tests. All the DNA markers were there, the negative controls were done, everything was done, all the different elutions, the primers, the yada, yada, yada. Excellent quality DNA sequence was obtained from the 36-inch tip, which I will show you, and from the lung. They were both saturated with blood. And they were both Homo sapien mitochondrial, cytochrome B and D loop region. Homo sapien mitochondrial DNA. All right, that's in the bacterial analysis, but it only relates to humans. If that mitochondrial DNA is in this sequence, it's human, and it's Homo sapien. And he said there's that's an absolute 100% certainty. Now, I sent him the samples that I extracted. I didn't send him this whole piece and he drilled it. I drilled it, put it in a bag, sent it off to him. I'm pretty careful about the way I do things, and I'm absolutely certain it was not contaminated, and it was not contaminated because the negative controls were negative, which means was there any different types of DNA in there? Now, that goes back 10 years ago. So I did do my due diligence, and then I had CAT scans done. And let me show you the samples. The 36-inch tip, the lung you just saw. Before I show you the fingertip, this is the hair follicle. Show this hundreds of times. That is the erector pili muscle. That makes your hair go, stand up on end and shake and all that stuff. That is the sebaceous gland, right there. All right, this is the root ball coming down inside to where it comes from, and the red and blue hair papilla, which is the blood, is right there. And there's the shaft coming out the top. It's 2 inches wide, so that's a giant. That was not DNA tested, but I'll show you the ones that were. And they are also giants, 2 of them. This is the 36-inch tip. And when I say tip, I mean fingertip. From there out. All right, now let's take your time, because this is shocking, shocking, shocking stuff. I do not disagree. That is the fingertip of a giant human being. DNA was 100% certain it was human. And I went down deep inside, as I will show you in a minute. Follow the fingernail. The fingernail comes all the way up around like this, and it's absolutely flawless. I mean, it was well taken care of, as far as I can determine. This little flake here is like sitting up on top of your fingernail. So it did a little bit of erosion underneath, but this was to the full thickness of the fingernail, I imagine. Now, when I found it, this piece was attached. What I did was smash it, thinking I was going to fracture off a piece, and it popped off like the scab, and it popped right off. And the reason is, it's grip skin. On your fingers and feet and toes and all that stuff, you have grip skin, and that's this stuff right here. You see that? That's what popped off. The fingernail's right up here. These are fingerprints. Same as just, my finger is as wide as one of those fingerprint ridges. Those 2 dots are sweat pores. And your fingerprints start right next to your fingernail. And that's what they are here. And now here's the piece I knocked off. Hold on. All right, this is the piece I knocked off. This is that piece right there. This is where the fingernail was. The fingernail was swooped way down around here like this. And that's where the fingerprint was. Now, this popped right off like a scab. You see that? That's almost like glued. It's just exactly like this. This is grip skin. It's keratinized cell. Very, very tough. And we have the same thing on us. Now, in between here and down here, it's fractured. That's a fracture. That's the fracture of the skin. All right, down below that is how it glued to the basement layer. This is the basement layer of underneath. If you peeled your skin off, you'd be down here where you got a ton of blood. And there is just saturated with blood. Your fingers, that's why they poke in your finger, the blood just squirts right out. It's all over the place inside the fingers. This just popped right off, and I drilled down in there and got some DNA, sent that off and had it tested, and it was human, as I showed you, and excellent quality. I didn't, and I do this with all the precautions. There was no question, and it can be retested. This is not something that it can't be retested. If they could continue to say this guy's crazy, well, this also I had tested for DNA, and it was human as well. That's a left hand. This is about 3 feet wide here, and about 4 feet-ish, maybe a little wider up there. Lay your hand back flat like that. You're going to have one of these tendons running straight down from the pad here, right down there. Take your finger, go back and forth like that. You feel the tendon. Boom, 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 boom. That is where your tendon is. The silver stuff is the grip skin. It's just peeling off just like it did off the gigantic fingertip. This is a whole nother hand. This has nothing to do with that gigantic fingertip, which is 3 feet. The other one, the fingertip itself is this wide. The fingertip itself. This guy's a whole hand, but it's still pretty wide. Now the little finger runs off here. The thumb goes that way, and this is the cleave in between the two pads. And I have the fingertips and all kinds of stuff, and it was DNA tested, and the fingertips have been CAT scanned and so forth. So it's pretty solid what I've got here. It's, you know, you can't dismiss it. And here, this is this long. This is when it first came out of ground, basically. It was just saturated with blood. Saturated. I put a little water on there and scrape it. You just see blood flow. And that's what happened. Now, of course, back then it was really red because it was just coming out of the ground. It was still moist. And I drilled down into here and just take some more of that blood. And it was just really like almost raw blood. But it was powdered. Well, not even powdered. It was moist. And here's another lung that I have here that is all the pleura is gone, which is the coating of the lung. You see this right here? You can't read it, but this says pleura, which is the coating around the alveoli, which is this. And it's thick. It's thick. And this one here is completely gone. For what reason, I don't know. But the alveoli are easily seen here. You see these little round holes? They're not holes, really. They were where air went in. This black and this red, that's iron banding. Inside the lung, they're pushing each other apart. And the black is pushing so hard, it pushed the red out from the holes and turned it into little blood spots. You see this? There's little blood spots that came out. Black iron, which is blood. Blood is an iron, basically, mostly. Red is what's called hematite. Black in the mud fossils is called magnetite. They have different polarities. They push each other apart. So the black pushed the red right out. The blood right out of here. And you see this little tab down here, how this is all really reddish? This one had the same thing. But it's completely peeled off. Now I have another one here, and they're both flat on the back. See how flat that is? Almost all my stuff is flat. Here's another lung. This is the pleura, and it's pushed off and rotted away this way. But it's flat as a pancake on the back because it was in Z-grade flood. And in the microscope, you can see all these little tiny alveoli holes. I don't know if you'll be able to see them, but probably not. I doubt it. But trust me, they're there. In the microscope, you can see it pretty easy. Now, so what am I showing you? I'm showing you stuff that was laying literally on the surface of the ground in this exposed Triassic area, which is where I am right here. Now, if you live, I have a lot of people in Pennsylvania that have been telling me that they're finding stuff too, all the way down. This is all exposed, the black places. And I have friends way down in here that have sent me stuff that's just amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, beyond amazing. I have researchers all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. And they don't expect anything for their work. They just do it because they're interested. And they're not trying to get ahead of anybody else. They just want to present something to support what I'm showing. That's what science is. It's not supposed to be a competition. It's supposed to be an investigation. And that's what we're doing, is investigating. Now, these are covered areas. All these other areas, you got to dig down. They excavate and they find these layers underneath, but they're everywhere. The whole world has that same layer. And that's why they found it in Australia as well, called the Etacarara biota, which is what Yale named it. But it's mudfossil sediment is really what it is. Triassic is the 3 layers that created the mud fossils. Now, I told you I had something, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I have something extremely exceptional in Triassic rock, in the middle of the 3 layers. I'll show it to you right now. Okay, my friends, so this is the Central Connecticut Basin area. And this is what Chat has to say about the basin area. It says Central Connecticut Basin area is similar to a bowl, basically, and it's called a graben. It's a block of Earth's crust has dropped down below 2 faults. It gives it a bowl-like trough shape, which it accumulated the sediments. The basin filled with layers of sediment and lava flows, especially during the Triassic and Jurassic period. Now listen to this, what it says. It says the lowest layers are often coarse red beds. So there's 3 layers. The lowest layer is a coarse red bed. Overlying that are gray clays. Overlying that are black shales. And they attribute it to lava and all this stuff, but it isn't. It was from the Great Flood. All 3 of those layers were soft at the exact same point in time, and I can prove that. Okay, I said I found something exceptional in the 3 layers of the red bed, the gray clay, which was on top of this, and the black cap, which was on top of this. The gray clay was wet, as was the red bed. So you had the red bed was this layer, all right across. Above it was gray clay. And a guy stepped on that wet, soft gray clay, pushed it down through the red bed. This would have to be wet, and this would have to be wet, moist at the same time, if I'm correct. And then on top came the black cap, which is this right here. Now I am going to show you this. I'm going to wet it up so we'll be able to see the red and the gray and the black. Now this is supposed to be shale. They say it's black shale on the top, which is the cap. This was gray clay, and below was a red, mud, basically a muddy red bed. This is the black shale. You see this? This is shale. It's identical, no difference whatsoever. Right? When I put a little water on there, you're going to see it's all black. Now, however, running down the sides, it's going to show the red beddish stuff because it got pushed down. It dropped down. Let's go with that. And the bottom of this came right off of here. this was here. Now, so this had to land on this very quickly, because I'm going to show you the detail on this, and it is staggeringly perfect. So all three layers were moist at virtually the same point in time. They claim these three layers were settled down in 40, 50 million years, something like this. I disagree with that, and I will show you my evidence in the microscope. We're going to wet it up, and we're going to look and see, how did this guy step down through here? I am on the exposed Triassic era. Right down the road from me, basically, a few miles away, is Dinosaur State Park. It's got a huge set of dinosaur footprints in the same stuff. But they're little bird prints. They're little, whatever they are, little dinosaur prints. This is a human print in that same layer. That means humans were here when this was laid down. Not only that, as I showed or will show you, there was bones here, there was geese here. My good friend Caesar Augustus was a goose, I think. There's his feathers and everything. Because of the specific conditions of boiling them and then saturating them for simmering probably for a long time in these fluids, the nucleophilic invasion and substitution came in. It's a little chemistry, but it's simple. They were able to come through these membranes. Collagens are membranes. Collagens, kerogens, they're membranes. They protect the contents of what they protect. And in this case, it was a bone, something like that. They're rocked here, pretty good sized bone, but not very big compared to the stuff I have. But the key is, these membranes protected virtually everything. All of these body parts, creatures' bodies, but they turned to stone. This is what they could not accept when I first approached Yale and everybody else. So that was a hurdle. And then they finally did accept that these things would preserve in exceptional preservation, which is right here, exceptional preservation, soft-bodied creatures promoted by silica-rich oceans, which is basically what I wrote in my paper, which is right here. Mudfossils, exact copies of original creatures, separated from the fascia and the skin. And then I go on and on about it. And then I say down here, it's got 50 times the silicon. The skin area had 50 times the silicon as the other tissues, because the skin and the membranes are what absorb the silicon. And it was fascia, and the fascia facilitated the fossilization. Anyway, and that was a 2015. I have this on academia.edu. Fascia facilitated fossilization. Yale's paper was 2016, a year later. Pretty close to my paper. And it's from the same layer. But they say there was nothing but jellyfish type things. See, it's cementing this, they're touting their discovery. Earth's earliest community of complex sea creatures lived in a warm, slimy, planetary, worldwide petri dish and nurtured a broad array of exotic species. They claim there was no bones, no teeth, no shells, nothing. They were just slimy little creatures, which is not true. It's not true at all. And I think they know that now. Anyway. You see, they went to this area in Australia, which has the same rocks, the red bed, the gray clay, and the black cap, exactly what it says. And these things are found worldwide in these rocks, and they give an age of millions, 580 million years. The creatures were small, and they can come as large as 1 meter, but they were just slimy things. And this is Lydia Tarr, and she says they were outright bizarre in appearance, don't resemble any organism today. I agree with that. So they're saying this was pre-creatures. All right, they want to understand if they have any relationships today. They said they might be some sort of failed evolutionary experiment. Yes. All right? They say the animals that were entirely self-bodied before evolution of shells. So they want to bring evolution into this. These were things that were just slimy stuff. That's how we ended up getting to be what we are a few 100 million years later. You know, it's. I think they notice, and I've contacted basically everybody here from Yale. And almost all of them that are making claims, and Derek Briggs specifically is who I gave my research to, well, years before this. And they actually got supported by all kinds of people, National Science Foundation, NASA, all these other, you know, and I think that's basically my research that they were using. I can't see any difference. If you can, I'd like to know what it is. And this is my paper right here. And I did, at the same time, I discovered this tubular fluid-filled fabric network. And then they came out a few years later and said it was the biggest organ in the body, interstitium. All right, so let's get back to this. Okay, so the Triassic and the Ediacara biota all worldwide have a red bed, a gray clay above it, and a black cap above that. That's a worldwide signature of the Triassic era, which was supposed to be so far back when this layer was put down, this Ediacara biota layer, I say is the Triassic. And there was supposed to be nothing but sea creatures. Well, that's just totally wrong. And there was human beings. So here's what I'm going to show you. And this is how somebody, an expert, can get a hold of me. Or somebody that wants to do a documentary or something about what this is going on here. And get this looked at reality. Because it is, and it's being avoided. So what we have here is the red bed, the gray clay, and a black cap. And you say, well, Roger, how could the gray clay, which is gray is green, green, gray, that's the best I could do. This is pushed down through the red bed. So this down here is now where this piece is. It used to be up here. So now it's no longer up here. And guess what's up there? The black cap. So now we have this. We have, this is the green clay. And that's down here now. Because it's the guy's foot. That's his footprint. It's not his foot, it's his footprint. And what happened to the black cap? Well, the black cap settled into that depression. This is exactly what we have. There's the red bed, and I'm going to put some water on it. You can't miss it. The gray clay pushed down through it, and then the black cap on top. And this is the black shale cap. Precisely what they say. This is the signature. There is no denying this. And this is how I can be gotten a hold of for some real inquiry about this. Which is about time somebody took an interest. Now, so can I prove this is red and a red bed? I believe I can. You see how red that is? And all this is mud. This is not a guy's body. This is mud. This is what boiled off from the flesh and just settled as a complete layer around the world as red bed, they call it. All right, so that would have been straight across here. The gray would have been up here. So we've seen the red bed. See? It sucks this stuff up like crazy instantaneously. That's the red bed. Nothing but mud from the boiled flesh. And here it was. The guy came, stepped on this, running like hell to try to get out of this maelstrom. And he pushed this gray clay, which is up over top here, right down through it. You see, that's the gray. I don't think anybody can miss that. That should not be underneath the red bed, which is up here. You see it? Very, very, very hard to miss. this gray clay has been pushed down through this layer, which was the red bed. So all around here is red bed. All right, that right there is the red bed piece that attached right to the side where the foot got pushed through it. Now, if you recall what it said in chat, it said that the lowest layers are often coarse red beds conglomerates. Well, what does that mean, a red bed conglomerate? I'll show you in a microscope. I'm looking at it right now. It's literally mud, but it's made out of blood. All right, this is nothing more than mud. And you see the little black spots, and you see a red and a black, that's a little piece of bone. That's the bottom of this layer. Now I'm going to shift up to the top of the layer. You see, it's all this red and the little black spots. Well, why would it be red and black spots like that? You're mud fossil people, you know what it's all about. It's about the polarity. And this is the other side, and then from there it went into the gray clay. So that was the layer of red bed, and these black spots are the polarity of the black blood compared to the red blood. You see it? They don't like each other. There's veins and artery blood is all mixed together, and this is like iron encapsulation. Usually you have iron banding, where the blood will lay one on top of the other and they'll snap apart. And that happens all the time. I have a heart here that just shows layer after layer after layer because it was laying on its side and the blood just snap, 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 snap. But this is from just complete boiling of all the blood. And it made that layer in the earth, which was the red bed. Okay, so you saw the red bed, and we see that it came right from here. And we looked sideways. The top is the same thing. Now, this is the gray clay. We're going to look at that in some detail now. All right, what we're going to be looking at in the microscope is this spot right here, which is where the gray clay was that got pushed down through the red bed. And we're going to be looking at that spot right there, the gray clay. And it had a little scale over the top of it, which looks like there must have been some kind of a slippy scale over the top. But we're going to look at it up in a microscope. We're pointing straight down at this spot here, up here. You see where my finger is? That's what we're going to be looking at. Now, it'll take a minute to home in here. You see, that's the gray clay. I mean, there's just no getting away from it. That's the gray clay. And all of these little bumpy looking things, those are what I call suck-ups. And why I say that is because when the guy was running, he was hitting hit this slurpy, this layer. It must have been a thin layer of sort of like, a thin layer of slime, let's call it. And when he hit, it went and pulled up all these little spots. I'll show it to you in more other detail. But this is a gray clay, and it is on the top of the foot. This is just exactly what we're looking at right there. That's where the gray clay is. Now I'm going to turn the foot over. Let me turn the lights on. That's the gray clay, and these are the suck-ups. We'll look at them again in a minute. This is how thick the gray clay was. All right, and there's no question about this. There it is right there. That's down below the red bed. So this is basically at the same layer as the red bed, the gray clay, and that has to be the thickness of the gray clay. So that would have been on top of the red bed, and it's just now equal to the depth of the red bed. Now let's look at the structure of the guy's foot. All right, and we're going to look around the edge because I can show you this is you'll see the difference between this and where it starts here. I got to put some water on there. The black cap, I think I'm going to move this out of the way. Well, you know what? Let's look at that first, because this was what was on top of the foot. All right, this was stuck to there, and it just came right off, and the red bed was all around. Everything was all around it when I found it. And I lost some pieces and some other stuff happened. But anyway, this is the black cap, and it's all the way down to here. That's black down to there. All right, that's not the gray clay. That is the black cap, but there is the red bed around it because it got pushed down through just as well. So the red bed just basically squirted up on the sides. If I chiseled that off, we'd hit the black cap, because the black cap is right there. All right, this is just sort of squirted up the side when he went. You know, this was probably up in this area somewhere. I don't know. But it's, trust me, this is from the guy's foot, and it's exactly molded into that foot. I don't put it in and out of here anymore because I scuffed it all up. But, oh, that's a black cap. Quite obviously, and the whole thing, that's just what it was. So, and it settled into the depression left in the gray clay. So the gray clay was still up here. That I don't have anymore. But this is exactly what is in the middle of the 3 layers. So these layers had to have been put down almost exactly at the same time, especially when you see the suck-ups. The suck-ups are so flawless that they had to be done like, watch this. Hold on, I gotta turn the lights off again. We're gonna be looking at suck-ups. Let me get my charts out of the way. And you can see on the edges, let me just explain to you what happens on a suck-up. Let me put a little water on here. You see that? That's the guy's foot. That's what his footprint will look like. Now, it does have something going on here that I really never have been able to figure out. But I can tell you what. Oops, I gotta back this off a little bit. This is the guy's footprint. These are the balls of his foot. And I think it was a no-toe, because I don't see any real toes here. There's something going on there. What it is, je ne sais pas, I do not know. This is the suck-ups. All right, this you can see is the gray clay. So this whole thing was the gray clay pushed down underneath the red bed, which is here. I cannot make it any clearer. It cannot be made clearer. That footprint went through and down through the red bed, and it's perfectly molded, so it had to be moist enough to mold, and the red bed had to be wet enough to squish out of the way with the weight of this guy. So the two things, in my mind, were virtually simultaneous at the same time. The red bed and then the gray clay settled down over it because this was the Great Flood. These are the suck-ups. Now, I think I could show you this without the microscope. You see how cool that is? The balls of the guy's foot? Looks like 2 little eyeballs. Now watch this. This freaked me out when I saw it. Look at that little dimply stuff. You see that? You see that? And out at the edge, you don't see it. Over here, it's not a suck-up anymore. And what a suck-up means is that as it hit, in the wetness went, and it pulled up these little dimples. This all happened virtually the same day. Okay, and there is no toes here. And that thing just fits almost exactly in there. Now, does it have the balls of the guy's foot? I don't know. But it's absolutely a foot. This is no question about this is a foot. Could something like this have made that? That looks like a bare foot of a guy. This almost looks like a shoe. I got to be honest with you. It's not a shoe, but boy, I'll tell you, it's as damn close as you can get. That is the skin and the fabric of a creature that was engineered. And I think I've shown you the other ones, or will, or you can find them easily on my website, on my YouTube channel. And again, here it is. It's just not deniable. And it's been denied. They refuse to look at this. Even where Dinosaur State Park that has the dinosaur footprints, they say no, they won't even look at it. They refuse to. The state archaeologists refused. Or everybody's refused, 100%, straight across the board. Of course, Yale refused everything. And they all did. They refused, every one of them refused everything. So this is the kind of thing we're up against. I could show this thousands and thousands of times, which I have. It doesn't seem to get anywhere. So somebody's got to stand up and say, this is crazy. This is insanity. We're walking around in circles. Oh, I just discovered this. Oh, I just figured this out. No, they didn't. They didn't figure anything out. They're just trying to make things more complicated so you go there and pay them to be told what you're supposed to think. That's what I have found. That's my opinion. I have a right to my opinion, and that is it. And that is straight across the board with academia and all of our government institutions, the same thing. All of them. 100%. Anybody wants to come and talk to me about my research, I would love that. I've been reaching out to them. Very frustrating. All right. I love you all. I guess I'm going to leave it at that. I don't see any reason to dismiss this. This is Triassic rock. There was humans here. And this did not happen that long ago. It's not a zillion years ago either. So, I don't know what else to say. If you know, I can't see why you wouldn't present this to your teachers and so forth to say, can you explain this? I know you're going to invite a little bit of criticism, but you know, say you got to approach this in the right way. You can't come up and say, yeah, I try to explain this, buddy. No, that doesn't work. Trust me, I tried it. There's something that's called a Rogerian argument. I'm not kidding. I'm serious. It's where you have empathy for the guy. You say, look, I know what you learned, and it seems very reasonable. Everything you taught me was just marvelous. You're a fabulous teacher, and I loved everything you taught me, you know, schmooze up. And then just say, but there's this guy, and what I'm seeing, I can't explain it. Can you explain this? Can you help me to understand this? Do it something like that. Take a couple of snapshots of something I show and say, he claims this, this, and this. But gently. And then work yourself into the center. And ask them if they, you know, don't do it like, don't, you know, don't start trouble. You gotta give them something, and then just ask, can you help me with this, and see what they say, and then, you know, report back to me. Let me know if you find any open geologists, anthropologists, biologists, any kind of ologist. I don't care who they are, geologist. It doesn't matter. We need to talk about the reality of everything, and the reality of everything now is completely different than the reality of everything now. All right? And these kind of things were happening. These guys were cleaning their feet. All of this was written about. We all laughed it off. Ah, what a bunch of crazy people making up all this nonsense. Well, you saw my giants. And I'm going to tell you something right now. These are puppies. Because biology could get this big. You know how big those blocks are? You have no idea. So stay tuned, my friends. I'm going to leave it at that for today. I love you all. Mudfossil University. I have all the emails from all the people I contacted, starting with Yale, Derek Briggs back in 2015. And so it didn't work out well. You know, everywhere. I mean, it was really bad. Very, 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 very discouraging. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you. I love you all. All right. I always like to prove what I claim. This is a heart. And these were where the valves of the heart were. And it died laying like this. And this is all iron banding. You see how cracked up that is? I'm going to take it apart here and show you. See the black shiny looking black stuff, and then you see the red underneath. It just pushes itself apart. And they crack, 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 crack. Because this was just nothing but a big ball of blood. And what I showed you before in the red bed, where we saw all of the red and black dots and so forth. It's the same thing, only it's just all gobbled together. In the heart, it was all laying right on top of one another. So it had to crack, 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 crack all the way down the line. But when I showed you this stuff, different story, it's just all mixed together, the black and the red. That's why it's, I forget what they called it. They called it coarse red bed conglomerates. Well, I go along with that. And then the gray clay, and then the black cap. That is literally undeniable. Triassic, and I am in the Triassic zone. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, that's as close as you're going to get to a human footprint. Is it a human? I don't know. This, I don't know. I just don't know. But that's where it hits with the heel. And these are coming up like this, rocking forward, and just, you know, heading off as quick as you could get out of town. And oh yeah, I said I'd show you this edge in the microscope. You're going to see a whole different thing going on from the side to here, because this is nothing more than the red bed. You see it? The gray clay is pushed down through it. But the red bed is here. And you know, this is, wow, I didn't notice this before. This is interesting. There's layers and layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 or 6 layers of the gray clay. You see it? That would have been the fallout from above on top of the gray clay, on top of the red bed, where we have these layers of gray. I gotta look at that in a microscope. Every time I look at something, I find something new to look at. It's incredible. All right, what we're gonna be looking at is the edge of the foot, where it trails over the edge. All right, there's the tip of my feather there. And I'm right at the edge of the footprint. And now I'm going to go down, 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 to the end of the edge, where we can see the gray clay has been pushed down underneath the red bed. You see that? That's the gray clay. This guy really hit this thing hard. And it pushed this red bed down under and squirted out under the red bed underneath. And we can see that very, very easily. All of this stuff is very, very simple to see, first of all. Secondly, it can be easily confirmed or denied, one or the other. If they can deny it and show that it's not real, that's a whole different story. And then on top of this came the black cap. Right there. This is all factual material evidence. There's nothing here that's speculation. And it would be very interesting to see what is this first layer to hit. It's almost like silvery looking, sparkly looking, you see it? And that's the layer that was right on top of the guy's footprint. You see how it's sparkly looking? I can see it, maybe you can't, but and there's his heel where it hit, and there's the tips of his front, and he took off going like that. And that all had to come down as volcanic ash, basically. This was the volcanism and the fallout. The red bed was from the boiling oceans. In this basin where I am, it's just cooking like a pot. And then the red bed, which was all the boiled flesh, boiled right off and settled in there. The organs and so forth, different story. They preserved very, very well because of the fascia. The fascia that coated them preserved them. As I know I showed you a bunch of stuff. I got interrupted several times, but I know I showed you those things, and I showed you this lung right here, DNA tested, CAT scan, deep inside, saturated with blood. You know, I'm just going to show you something. Hold on one second. All right, you see that? That's a left human lung. It's been DNA tested. I'm going to show you how easy it is to get blood out of there. That's the spot I'm going to be showing in the microscope. This right here was where the guy's heart was. He was laying flat on his back like this, and the heart was still inside of him. And it's separated because it has its own fascia. This has its own fascia. Now, we're going to look at this, and I'll show you how easy it is to get blood. It rehydrates very easy. The red, not the black. The black is a different story. You see that? That's just saturated with blood. The black stays away from the red. It's the iron banding, just like I was telling you. Now, let me put a little more light on this. And then I'm going to put a little water on there and show you how quick this stuff turns back into blood. So hold on, stay with me. Okay, my friends, get ready for this. Now, this is the pleura that surrounds the lung. It's like a rubber bag, and it's really stretchy and gummy and gooey. And then below that is a membrane. So this is just the rubber bag. Now, I'm going to put some water on here. That rubber bag has to be completely flush with blood, which you can obviously see how quickly the water is going to be absorbed, and it is blood. Let me turn up the light just a smidge. I'm going to let that settle in for a second, because red blood absorbs water like, I mean, look at how quick it does. I'm not touching anything right now. But in a second, I'm just going to scrub this, and you'll see the blood just pour out of there. What I did when I did my sample, here, let me tune this in a little bit better. You see, these are all little blood vessels and all kinds of things. Now, when I did my sample, I did a spot that was even redder and bloodier than this. And I drilled in it. Well, first of all, I cleaned it up real good. Then I drilled in it, and then I, got rid of that. And then I drilled deeper, and I sent that off. So I sent off like, not powder, but almost like clay, gritty sort of clay from down inside. This is the surface. Now, I wouldn't just send this surface stuff off, but I can show you how bloody it is. And underneath is going to be bloodier because this is a lung. That's what lungs do, is they transpire, meaning they move blood in and around all this oxygen. Now, I am going to go ahead and create some blood. You ready? Hold on, let me move this over into the microscope. Okay, here goes. All I got to do is move that. Look at that. See that? That's blood. That is a bloody artery right there. You see that? It's that simple. It's that simple. I mean, that is red blood. There's nobody can deny this, and it's here. It can be tested. It's already been tested. It's already been validated that its DNA is a human. And this is pleura. And it is anatomically exact to a lung. And the DNA was positive for Homo sapien DNA, mitochondrial DNA. And that's what we're looking at right there. Look at the blood. It's right there. It's just right there. Look. Look at this. I can't find it. Right there, look. It's everywhere. No, the other one I took was from over here. This was really bloody, just raw red blood. And of course I cleaned it very, very well. And once you do, you sort of remove a lot of stuff. But I drilled down in there and I got the stuff, and it was excellent quality. And you can see the red blood. I got a blood on my hand right now. It is what it is, and it's hard to believe that can be denied for this long and just say I have no evidence, he's not peer reviewed, so we're not going to take his word for it. Well, somebody stand up against me. It hasn't happened. All right, this is the lung that had the ripped pleura. This is how thick it is. This is the top of the pleura. See it eating up the moisture like instantaneously. Hold on, let me turn the lights down. Watch this. All right, put some water on there. And this is all that fabric that coats the lung. That's the pleura. Now, if we step down, because it's ripped, now we're going down to where the surface of the lung is. Remember I said you could see the alveoli? All those little tiny spots here, every one of those is a little tiny alveoli. And that's inside your lung. The air comes inside and transitions all through there, and then you blow out the carbon dioxide and your body absorbs the other stuff. But this is the one, here it is right here. And this is the one that had the torn up, whoops, hold on. This is the one that had the torn up fabric, the pleura. Still flat. They're all basically flat because of this flood. This is, it can't be denied. Now the tests are available to do these things. They just won't do the tests. Even like this one here. I think I showed you this. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But there was a piece of scabbed on, and I could see there was blood right there. Well, in the toes, there's always going to be blood. A lot of blood in your feet, in your fingertips. So I drilled down in there, and I got the stuff ready to go, but nobody will do the DNA tests on it. And sometimes I'm not too up on doing that sort of stuff either. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. But right now I go with reality. I believe that it was supposed to be, that we are supposed to be here to find reality, and reality is reality. It may be one of those crazy realities, but it is what it is. You see that? You got to have mudfossil eyes to understand what you do see. It's not just erosion, my friends, not just sedimentation. You see that? There was a core of a bone right there, and this is flesh. Bones did not make it. They just didn't make it. And it came out to here. I don't know what kind of a bone it was, but it was a good-sized bone. And it came down to here with the ball here. It could have been a shoulder bone or something. I don't know. You see the seam here and the seam here? And right there, that's it. And then it has it must have rolled on something. And this is some pretty serious muscle-ish stuff coming down. But nobody ever noticed that. You just throw this aside and say it's just a piece of eroded stuff. You can actually see the flesh in here when you look at it in a microscope. You can see all the little layers of flesh. That's not just erosion. You see that? This is some kind of a tendon or something hanging off the edge here. That could be a chest or a small creature. I don't know. I just don't know anymore. I don't think so. I think this is a bone, and that's the head of the bone would be up there. And bones transition sometimes like this absolutely flawlessly. This was in an area, quite obviously, that was a lot more invasive. And you got almost like sand on this. But you can see all the skin and everything if you really know how to look at it. And this, you don't even have to know how to look at it. It's a bone. And that's the kind of bone that would, do something like this. That's the ligament. It locks into the other bone and they can't get apart, but they can rock around. And that's probably, it could be blood vessels or it could be nerves. That's a bone foramen, they call it. I think there's probably arteries running out of there, artery and vein, but I don't know. And that's the marrow inside, and this actually has one little tiny piece of bone. I got to show you this. Watch this. You do not find bone in these things. Bones did not survive, and that's the first thing I wrote to Derek Briggs. I said Ca2 plus does not survive in these conditions, so that you don't see bones, you see stones. Well, that has a little tiny piece of a bone. Let me show you. Otherwise than that, that's 100% mudstone from nucleophilic invasion. That spot, I can't tell you exactly why. Somehow it was protected. I'll show it to you in a microscope. I hope you saw what I was doing there. That little tiny spot, well, you're going to see in a microscope. Okay, this is the bone that has that little tiny piece of bone that's left. Other than that, it's 100% mudstone. Now, I got it up in a microscope. We're going to come up and look at it. It's that tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of white right there. All right, I'm going to turn the lights off. I'm going to come up into the microscope. Now, it's going to have the tunica around it, which is the layer that surrounds it, really like this, the fascia. And that'll be this brown layer. All right, hold on. You see, this is the surrounding layer that surrounds the marrow and the inside. But there must have been some bone here, or this could possibly be even tendon. Normally you wouldn't find tendon inside the bone. I think this is bone. But whatever it is, it's in this particular bone, and this is a bone. Of that, there is no doubt. That's the only white spot I could find. All the rest is this bone marrow. That's all bone marrow. I don't know, maybe you can see some. The whole thing might have been bone from here all the way to here. I think that's the key. I think it was all bone. And there's actually, you can see quite a bit of bone now that I'm looking at it. I think I can. The whitest white part was the other one. Here it's just all black and gooey, which would be your bone marrow. And that one right there is the one that caught my eye as being bone. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think that this whole layer here is bone, because otherwise you just get to the area which is the membrane. I think the whole layer wrapping all around. Let's follow it around. Yeah, I'm seeing bone all the way around here. It's highly deteriorated, but it's there. That is not like the interior, like in here. That's just bone marrow. We're out at the edge again. This is like the membrane that surrounds it. The bone is all the way around here. I'm seeing it now. That's bone. So it comes into about here. I'd say that's all bone there. Starting to make sense. It's all bone. Now it's making sense. But that one little piece of bone threw me off a bit. Look at that. This is nothing but blood. There's a blood vessel there. And you see how the black is backed off from the red. They just don't like each other. They stay away. Polarity. When they were alive and moving back and forth next to each other, everything was okay. But once they stopped and they said, whoa, 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 get away from me. I said, yeah, you get away from me. And snap. They flocculate. People love that word, flocculation. That is flocculation right there. The black flocculates together, and the red really is the runny one. The black flocculates. It's a flocculator. Anyway, that's what bone's all about. All right, you got to check this out. This is so cool. This is a ligament attachment. You see all these little pockets in here, and all the blood stuff, and that it's like a little cavity. There was a ball that sat in here that had all these big bumps all over it, and locked itself in to those little holes. And then it had a little tiny stalk, and then it went over to another bone and had one of these on the other bone. Let me show you something. And here it is right here from this bone here, which is an attachment bone. When one bone attaches to another bone, it's a ligament right there. That hole was what we were looking at with all those little bumps. And it attaches to another bone, something like this. I think I showed this before. However, this one has to have the same thing as that. And between them has to be a little stalk that can wobble around a little bit. So it's got to be, somewhat of a little stalk. So I'm going to show you something that's just kind of amazing, which is a ligament nobody can account for sticking up out of the ground. You see that? That's exactly what would fit into that socket right up there. And all those little holes, all those the balls would fit into those little holes. And then would come down a stalk from there to attach to the other bone with that little stalk. So I would imagine underneath there's another one of these or something similar. And it's just, these are tough, and tougher. Ligaments, tendons, yikes, tough. Look at that. It's just sitting there. But I'm pretty sure it was exactly what I'm showing you is from that bone. It's this thing right here. That right there snapped onto there, and underneath was something like that. And between them, you have to have some kind of a stalk to make it rock and roll and do all the things it's got to do. That's my opinion. That is my opinion.